Now, for the second part of our lesson on series and sigma notation, we will now discuss sigma notations. Okay, so what are sigma notations? So we have here, let a sub I be an expression that involves an integer I. The sum of the first n terms of a sequence can be represented by a sigma notation. Thus, a sigma notation is actually a representation of the associated series of a given sequence, or it is an instruction to compactly write a given series. Okay, another term for sigma notation is summation notation. So that is, if we're going to rewrite this series, okay, in sigma notation form, so suppose this is our series, itong a sub m plus a sub m plus 1 plus a sub m plus 2 until a sub n. So if we're going to rewrite this one in sigma notation, so ito yung mangyayari. We have this notation. So how are you going to read this one? So it is read as the summation of a sub I from I equal to m to n is equal to a sub m plus a sub m plus 1 plus a sub m plus 2 plus until a sub n. So here, a sub I is what we call the summand or the term of the summation. So siya yung term. Okay? So, yung I dyan, siya yung mag indicate sa term. So, if your I is equal to M, so that is your first, okay, value of I. So, siya yung A sub M natin dito. Okay? So, you will just substitute that value. Then, you will just add 1 to M until you will end at N. So, itong nandito. So, what is your I? I is actually the index of the summation. So, siya yung tatakbo or siya yung variable na sasubstitutan natin, okay, para makuha natin yung sum. Okay? M here is what we call the lower limit. So, siya yung starting point or siya yung first value in the summation or siya yung first value sa series natin. Okay? And n here is actually the upper limit or the upper bound. Siya yung terminating point naman ng series natin. Okay? Para mas maintindihan natin tong sigma notation na to, let's have this activity. Okay? What we're going to do is to expand each summation and simplify if possible. Now, balikan natin yung definition kanina. 'Di ba yung gagawin lang natin ay magsa-substitute lang tayo ng value ng I sa A sub I natin, starting at from M and ends at N. So therefore, magsa-substitute lang tayo sa I from M to N. So from here, sa example number 1 natin, we have summation of the quantity 2i plus 3 from I equal to 2 to 4. So what we're going to do, if we're going to expand this one, we will just substitute, okay, I equal to 2 until 4. So from that, we will now have, okay, ayun, lumabas ng number 2. So from number 1 muna tayo. We will substitute I starting from 2 and end sa 4. So you have 2 times 2 plus 3. Okay? Then, plus, so 2, mag-a-add tayo ng 1. 'Di ba? M, then next is M plus 1. So, 2 plus 1, so 3 naman. So, you have 2 times 3 plus 3. So, sa I lang kayo magsasubstitute. Plus, add ka ulit ng 1, 2 times 4 plus 3. So here, we will end now dito. Bakit? Because our upper limit is 4. So ito yung expansion niya. Then let us now simplify if masisimplify siya. In this case, kaya yang i-simplify. So we have 4 times 2 plus 3, you have 7 plus next you have 9 plus 11. And the sum will be 27. So, yon. So, madali lang siya. Okay, so the answer for number 1 is 27. Now, how about for number 2? We have summation of 2 to the n starts from 0 to 5. Okay? So, summation of 2 to the n from n equal to 0 to 5. So, here, yung I na alam natin sa definition, naging n lang. Kasi yung I, variable lang siya. So, it could be any letter. Pwede nating i-represent siya ng any letter. Okay? Pero yung process, the same lang siya. We will just substitute. So, from here, we have 2 raised to, we will start at 0. So, 2 to the 0 plus 2 to the 1, 2 to the power of 2, then 2 to the power of 3 until you will stop at 5. So, until dito lang. Okay? So, from that, you will now have 2 to the 0 is just 1, right? Then 2. 2 square is 4. Then you have 8. Then 16 plus 32. And the sum will be equal to 63. Okay, so this is now our final answer. Okay, so I hope nakuha nyo yan. Now, for number 3, we have the summation of the square root of k all over the quantity k plus 1. K runs from 1 to 6. So, we will just substitute pa rin. Our variable here is k. Okay, so we will now have equal to square root of 1 over 1 plus 1 because we will start at 1. Okay, then square root of 2, then 2 plus 1, then square root of 3, 3 plus 1, until 6 siya. Okay, so you will just write until 6. 4 plus 1, square root of 5, 5 plus 1, then square root of 6, 6 plus 1. Then simplify if possible. So we will now have 1 half square root of 2 over 3, square root of 3 over 4, square root of, oh no, that should be 2. Square root of 4 is 2. So we have 2 over 5 plus square root of 5. It should be square root of 5 over 6, then square root of 6 over 7. Now, observe that the terms here cannot be added na. Okay? You cannot simplify, add square root of 2 plus square root of 3. Okay? So, therefore, this will be your final answer. Okay? So, that's your answer for number 3. So, I hope nakuha nyo yan. So, what you're going to do lang, if you're going to expand the summation, you, you will just substitute. Okay? From your index, so it could be I, N, or any letter. Starting from the lower bound, then end kayo sa upper bound. Okay? Now, let's have this activity naman. Write each series in sigma notation. So, therefore, pabaliktad naman yung process. Given yung series, we will rewrite that one in sigma notation form. Okay? So, given yung series. Example, number 1, we have 1 plus 1 half plus 1 third plus 1 fourth plus until 1 over 100. So, as you can see here, meron tayong series. So, how are we going to write this one in sigma notation? So, we have here, okay, sulat ko lang yung summation. Summation of. So, ano yung A sub I na ilalagay natin dito? Now, observe from our series here, fraction siya. Tama? So, starts at 1 over 1. So, gawin ko lang fraction yung 1 para makita niyo yung pattern. Plus 1 over 2 plus 1 third plus 1 fourth plus until 1 over 100. So, ang gagawin natin dito, tingnan nyo yung constant at sino yung nag-change. So, from here, yung constant natin ay yung numerator. Hindi siya nag-change, right? So, therefore, in our summation, hindi dapat mag-change si 1. So, dapat 1 pa rin yung numerator. So, we have 1 here. Yung denominator natin yung nag-change. So, siya yung pinapalitan natin. Variable siya kasi nag-change. Di ba? If we are talking about a variable, mag-change siya. So if that's the case, di ba from our definition, yung variable, siya yung isa-substitute natin from the lower limit and ending sa upper limit. Okay? Now, suppose our variable is I. Now, if we start at I equal to 1, kasi yung number natin dito nag-start sa 1. Right? So, therefore, para makuha natin tong series na to, I will now have I here. Right? And your I should start at 1 and it must end at 100. Right? So, if that's the case, our sigma notation now is just the summation of 1 over I runs from 1 to 100. So the apparent pattern that you will get is 1 over yung I. Si I yung nag-change. So if you try to substitute I equal to 1 sa first, you will now have 1 over 1. That is 1 here. Right? Next, next need 1 is 2. So 1 over 2. So you have plus 1 half. Then 1/3. And so on. Until dapat magkaka-coincide yung last term natin. So 1 over 100, so you have 100 here. Okay? But take note, this summation is also the same as the summation of, so just try to check. Summation of 1 over I plus 1, I starts from 0 until 99. Now, if you try to check this one, we will start our I at 0. So 1 over 0 plus 1 is just 1. So our first number is also 1. That is correct. Okay? If 1 naman yung sunod, so 1 plus 1, 2. So 1 half naman yung sunod, which is correct. And sa last term, 99 plus 1, so you have 100. So therefore, I will still have the same series even though different yung sigma notation natin. So ano ang implication nito? Okay, ang ibig sabihin nito, the sigma notation of a given series is not unique. We can have different sigma notation but the same series yung lalabas. Okay, so you can have a lot of answers here. Okay, for number 1. Okay, so I hope nakuha nyo yan. For number 2, we have negative 1 plus 2 minus 3 plus 4 minus 5 plus 6 minus 7 plus 8 minus 10 until minus 25. So how are we going to write this one in sigma notation form? Okay? So observe that yung numbers natin nag-i-increase, 'di ba? From 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Right? So therefore, if that's the case, now if I'm going to disregard those negative signs there, suppose I have 1 plus 2 lang, plus 3, plus 4, and so on until plus 25. So, madali lang mahahanap yung form ng sigma notation. Kasi if I'm going to start at I equal to 1, so since 1 yung number ko dito, so therefore, yung A sub I natin ay just I, right? So, I starts from 1 and it will end at 25. Then, I will get it right na. Now, take note that my series has negatives, right? So I have negative 1, minus 3, minus 5, minus 7. So how are we going to obtain that minus sign there? Okay, so siya yung nagpapa um, hirap sa atin dito. Okay, so we need to determine the pattern or the value that we're going to um, um, give sa ating sigma notation para makuha yung mga negative signs. Now, what will we do to 1 para makuha natin tong negative 1? Di ba we will just multiply it by negative 1? Right? So, I will now multiply it by negative 1. So, times negative 1. Itong 1 dito, okay, dito ko na lang ilalagay. So, negative 1 times 1, that is negative 1. So, makukuha ko to. Now, what will you multiply to 2 para makuha mo yung positive 2? 'Di ba? I will just multiply 1 para 2 pa rin yung result, positive. Now, take note, 1 is just equal to negative 1 raised to 2. Negative 1 raised to 2 is positive 1. So I will still get 2 if I'm going to multiply it by negative 1 raised to 2. Now, 3. 3, para makuha kong negative 3, I must multiply it by negative 1. Right? Now, negative 1 raised to 1 is negative 1. Also, negative 1 raised to 3 is also negative 1. So therefore, negative 1 pa rin yung multiply ko. Now, 4. Para 4 yung result, I must multiply it by positive 1. But negative 1 raised to 4 is positive 1. Right? So from that, I can now see a pattern. So therefore, yung 1, 2, 3, 4 until 25, magmo-multiply lang ako ng negative 1 raised to 1, 2, 3, 4 until 25. At makukuha ko na yung mga negatives sa series ko. Right? So therefore, from that, I will just multiply this I here by negative 1. And take note, yung exponent yan nag-change from 1 until 25. Kung ano yung number sa taas, ito, 1 dito, 1 rin tong nandito. Kung 2 dito, 2 rin siya. So therefore, if I have I here, I will also have I here. So from that, I will now have this sigma notation. So this will be my final answer now. So the sigma notation of this series is this one. Okay, so I hope nakuha niyo yan. Number 3 naman. Okay, so I will just erase this stuffs here. Yan, erase, erase. So what will be my sigma notation for this one? Okay, so observe that the numerator is constant, so I will have 1 there. Now, observe that the denominators are actually powers of 2. Di ba 1 over 1 yan? Okay? So 2 is just the power of is just 2 to the power of 1. 4 is 2 to the power of 2. 8 is 2 to the power of 3 and 2 to the power of 4 and so on, right? This is 2 to the power of 5, 2 to the power of 6, 2 to the power of 7. How about for 1? What will we do to 2? What should be the exponent of 2 para 1 yung answer? 'Di ba? You must have 2 to the 0. So as you can see here, yung pattern niya is 1 over 2 to the something, right? So I will now have 1 over 2 raised to the power of something. Suppose I have I. So from that, if I have 1 over 2 to the power of I, yung I ko must start at, from this series, di ba 0 yung exponent sa first? So, it must start at 0 and ends at 7. So, this one is one sigma notation of this series. Okay, you can have another answer for this. Example, I can have summation of 1 over 2 to the I plus 1. I starts from suppose you have para 0 yun, so it must be negative 1 raised to 6, right? Para 7 rin yung last number. O di ba? Another answer yan. Or you can have the summation of 1 over 2 to the I minus 1, pero yung I magsa-start sa 1 and mag-end sa 8. So that is another answer. Okay, so you can have a lot of answers for this one. How about for number 4? So ito, madali lang siya. We have summation of. So si A ay constant. So yung mga constant, ilagay nyo na agad. Okay, para hindi kayo mahirapan. Now, yung subscript ni A yung nag-change. And as you can see, yung subscript ni A are actually multiples of 2. Diba 2 is just 2 times 1? Si 4 ay 2 times 2. Si 6 ay 2 times 6. 2 times 4 until 2 times 10. Therefore, yung pattern niya ay 2 times something. So, you have 2, suppose I pa rin yung gagamitin ko, A sub 2 times I. And I must start at, as you can see in our pattern here, magsa-start at 1 at it must end at 10. So, you have 1 until 10. So that is your final answer. Okay, so I hope naintindihan nyo yan. Okay, now for the next one, we have here properties of sums. Okay, so these properties will help us evaluate summations in much easier way. Kasi, di ba, if you have a series of many numbers, now, if maraming numbers yan, i-add nyo, di ba, it will take years para matapos yan. But if you have these properties, so given series, you will just rewrite that one in sigma notation. Then using these properties na i-introduce ko mamaya, you can just have or solve for that sum easily. Okay? So let's have these properties. Let m and n be integers and c be a real number. So we have this first property. The summation of c from I equal to m to n is just equal to c times n minus m plus 1. So therefore, ang ibig sabihin yan, si c ay any real number. So it is a constant. The summation of a constant is equal to the constant times upper bound minus lower bound n minus m plus 1. So just use that formula if summation ng constant yung ibinigay. Okay? Next. If you have this one, summation of c times a sub I is from m to n. Okay, so c is any number and a sub I is any um, expression. Okay, yung a sub I natin. So what you are going to do, if meron kang multiple ng isang expression sa summation, you can just have it outside. So pwede siyang i-factor out. Parang nag-factor out ka kung suppose polynomial yung um, pinag-uusapan, di ba magpa-factor out. So parang ilalabas natin yung constant. So yan yung property 2. Property 3. Summation of a sub I plus minus b sub I is from m to n, is equal to the summation of a sub I is from m to n, plus minus the summation of b sub I is from m to n. So ano yung ma-observe dito? Di ba what is done here is actually, yung summation parang na-distribute siya. Right? So, distribute natin yung summation sa bawat expression dito. A sub I at B sub I. So, kung plus, so plus yung gagamitin nyo. Kung minus, minus naman. Thus, in words, ibig sabihin yan, the sum of, uh, the summation of the sum is just equal to the sum of the summations. Okay? The summation of the sum or difference para masama yung minus. The summation of the sum or difference is just the sum or difference of the summations. So, ang gagawin natin, i-distribute lang natin yung summation. Property 3 is 4 is what we call the telescoping sum. Okay? Ito yung tinatawag na telescoping sum. Okay? So, ano yung telescoping sum? The summation of a sub I plus 1 minus a sub I is from m to n, is equal to a sub n plus 1 minus a sub m. Saan yan galing? Now, let's try to expand this summation. Ito. So, di ba this is just equal to, di ba we will start at a sub m? So, we have a sub m plus 1 minus a sub m, right? Plus, then m plus 1 yung sunod, right? So, that is a sub m plus 1 plus 1. So, you have a sub m plus 2 minus a sub m plus 1, right? Plus a sub m plus 2 yung sunod, plus 1, so plus 3, minus a sub m plus 2, plus until, okay, plus n. Si n yung last. So you have a sub n plus 1. So you just substitute n plus 1 sa dito. Then minus a sub n. Okay, so what can you observe here?
meron tayong a sub m plus 1 dito, meron rin dito, right? So this is positive, this is negative, this will be canceled out. Okay? M plus 2, makakancel rin ito. Therefore, as you can see, ang partner nito ay yung sa kabila, right? So therefore, itong nandito, mawawala. Okay, so I will just show the term before a sub n plus 1 minus a sub n. Ano yung term before n? Di ba n minus 1? Before n is n minus 1, right? So therefore, if that's the case, this will become, okay, erase ko muna to. So, this will be, yung term before that, n minus 1. So, a sub n minus 1 plus 1, substitute ka ng n minus 1 sa I. So, that will become a sub n na lang. Then, a sub n minus 1. Right? So, plus dot, dot, dot. Ito yung term before this one. Right? So, from that, itong a sub n, mawawala yan. And this will be canceled out. So therefore, itong a sub n minus 1, makakancel rin yan sa terms na nandito sa ellipsis. So ano yung natira? You have a sub n minus 1 and a sub n, which is this one. Okay? So therefore, if you're going to evaluate the summation of a sub I plus 1, if ito yung expression niya, yung I sub I plus 1 minus a sub I, okay, ang gagawin nyo, you will just substitute the upper limit to your I in I plus 1. So you have a sub n plus 1 minus yung I naman sa a sub I, substitute ka ng m. So minus a sub m. That is your telescoping sum. So I hope clear yung telescoping sum na yan. Okay, so let's have another formulas here. This will help us solve problems sa summation. Okay, so these are special formulas. First one, the summation of I runs from 1 to n. Di ba if you're going to, tawag dito, if you're going to add or expand this summation, magiging 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 until plus n siya. So, ano yung formula for that? You have this one. N times n plus 1 over 2. So, ito yung gagamitin nyo if you have summation of I. Okay? Now, for summation of I squared naman, so ito yung expansion niya, yung formula is this one. Okay? So, just take note of the formulas. For I sub 3 naman, you have this one. Okay? Yung formula ay ito. So just take note of these formulas. So this will help us solve problems involving sigma notations. Okay? Now suppose let's have this activity. Okay, so what we're going to do is to expand each summation and simplify if possible. So we have here 5 problems. Okay, so let's try problem number 1. Okay, so we have here the summation of 4, the quantity 4i minus 15. I is from 1 to 30. So what we're going to do is to evaluate this sigma notation. So as you can see, sa sigma notation, si 4i at si 15 nahiwalay by this operation minus. Right? From property 3, if we have the summation of the difference of two expression, di ba we can separate the two? Okay? By taking the summation of each expression. So therefore, what we're going to do is to distribute the summation here. So we have the summation of 4i, I is from 1 to 30, minus summation of 15, I is from 1 to 30. Okay? So from that, we can now have from this term, first term, summation of 4i. So 4i. So we have here a multiple na 4. Diba, if we have a number times an expression, you can actually put that number outside the summation. So if that's the case, we will now have, applying property 2, we have 4 times the summation of I I is from 1 to 30 minus the summation of 15. I will just copy. I is from 1 to 30. Now, from that, we have a special formula for the summation of I, right? The bus summation of I from 1 to I is from 1 to 30 is just equal to your oh, I is from 1 to n, that is just equal to n times the quantity n plus 1 over 2. And what is our n here? You have 30. So therefore, you will just substitute 30 to our n sa formula. So you will now have 4 times the quantity n, which is 30, times n plus 1, so 30 plus 1, all over 2. This is the first term. Minus summation of 15, that is summation of constant. So we will just apply the first property. So that is 15 times upper bound is 30 minus lower bound, which is 1 plus 1. Okay? So from that, we will now have, using your calculators, if you have calculators with you, the final answer will be 1,710. So this is our final answer for problem number 1. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Now let's proceed to problem number 2. Okay, so we have here the summation of the quantity 5n minus 2 times n plus 3. N is from 1 to 50. Okay, now take note, we don't have a property for multiplication kasi we have two expressions here na multiply. So therefore, you cannot have, or you cannot have a property na i-distribute natin yung summation sa bawat factor. Hindi siya pwede. Okay, you cannot do that one sa multiplication. Okay, walang property for that. But take note, I can distribute this one or expand this expression using FOIL method, right? So from that, I will now have the summation of, this is, the expansion will be 5n square 15 minus 2n, so that will be plus 13n. So I expanded it already, minus 6, right? So the expansion is this one. Okay, just check using FOIL method. This will be the expansion, where n is from 1 to 50. So there. Now from that, since we have three expressions here separated by plus and minus sign, so we can apply property 3, right? So from that, we will now have summation of 5n square plus summation of, by the way, the upper bound and the lower bound, do not forget to write. Then 13n, n is from 1 to 50, minus summation of 6, n is from 1 to 50. Then applying property 2, we can put the numbers outside the summation, right? So we have 5 times the summation of n square, n is from 1 to 50, plus 13 times the summation of n is from 1 to 50, minus summation of 6, n is from 1 to 50. So there. Now, we have formulas for n squared and n. Okay? So from our special formula, I lang yung ginamit. Okay? Variable lang naman yung I, so you can still use that one here. So n squared, di ba yung formula is n times n plus 1 times 2n plus 1. Depending on your n. Our n here is 50, so we will now have times, 5 times the quantity 50, times 50 plus 1 times the quantity 50, 2 times 50, okay, para masunod yung formula. 2 times 50 plus 1, right? All over 6. Okay, that is for the first term only. Plus 13 times the quantity, 50 times 50 plus 1, all over 2, right? Then minus, this is 6, summation of constant, times 50 minus 1 plus 1. Okay? Now, using your calculator, perform all the operations involved. The final answer will be, okay, I will just use my calculator here. And the answer is 230,900. And that is the final answer for this problem. Okay, so I hope that is clear to you. Now, let's proceed to number 3. There. Okay, so the same with problem number 2, you cannot have your summation na naka-square. Okay, yung ilalagay nyo sa loob yung summation, hindi siya pwede. Okay, so, but we can still, tawag dito, we can still expand this expression, right? Para magamit natin yung property 3. So, expanding that one, you will have summation of the expansion will be, okay, that's wrong. That should be 9i squared. So you have 9i squared minus 6i plus 1. This is the expansion. I is from 1 to n. Okay, so our upper bound is n. Okay, so from that we can distribute the summation. So you have summation of 9i squared. I is from 1 to n minus summation of 6i. I is from 1 to n plus summation of 1. I is from 1 to n. Okay? So from that, we can apply property 2. Okay? Labas lang natin yung mga numbers. Summation of I squared. I is from 1 to n minus 6. Summation of I is from 1 to n. Next is plus summation of 1. I is from 1 to n. Okay? Now, let's apply the formulas for I squared and I. This is equal to 9 times n times n plus 1 times 2n plus 1 all over 6. Right? Then we have 6 times n plus 1 all over 2 plus 1 times n minus 1 plus 1. Okay? So you have it there. Then let's simplify. Okay? So I will just expand this term here, then multiply it by 9. So we will now have 2 n, so that is 18. Okay? 18. So I will expand it right away na. Okay? 18n cube. Okay. Next, we have um n 3n plus times 9. Okay. So this is 27n squared, right? Then we have okay, this one, then 1. 1 times n plus times 9, that will be plus 9n. Okay? All over 6, right? Okay. Next, minus, this is 6n squared. Okay, n squared. And you have plus 6n all over 2. Okay. Next, plus n. Okay, so we have there. Then let's simplify further. What is the LCD? This is 6, right? So, over 6 yan lahat. So, we have 18n cubed plus 27n squared plus 9n. Okay? Minus, that will be 318n squared plus minus 18n. Then plus 6n. Okay, so from that, we can now simplify this one to 18 and cube plus 27n squared minus 18n squared. So that is 9n squared, right? Then 9n minus 18 plus 6. So that is minus 3n, right? All over 6. Okay, simplified form, that will be divided by 3. Reduce this one. So this is 6n cubed plus 3n minus n all over to n squared, 3n squared. Okay, so this is now your final answer. Okay, so I hope that is clear. Okay, so for number 4, we have here 1 over 1 times 2 plus 1 over 2 times 3 and so on until 1 over 99 times 100. Okay, so for us to apply the properties ng sigma notation, we need to rewrite this one in sigma notation form. Okay, so from here, we have this is just equal to the summation of, okay, 1 is constant, so you have 1 over. So as you can see, yung pattern dito, si 1, inadan lang ng 1, naging 2. 1 times 2. Then 2, 2 plus 1, 3. So nag-add ka lang ng 1 sa second factor. So we have, suppose this is I, so you have I plus 1 here, right? I is from 1 to 99 para makuha natin tong series na to, right? So from that, we have now obtained the sigma notation form of this series. Now, from our properties, we don't have property for division, right? Wala tayong property sa summation ng division. So therefore, we need to do something here para maka-apply tayo ng other property. Now, take note that the telescoping sum, okay, involves I plus 1 and I. At nakikita natin dito meron tayong I at meron tayong I plus 1. Now, recall telescoping sum is given by the summation of A sub I plus 1 minus A sub I is from M to N is just equal to A sub N plus 1 minus A sub M. Ito yung formula ng telescoping sum. So therefore, para magamit natin itong telescoping sum, we must have A sub A plus I plus 1 minus A sub I. Pero dito, hindi siya minus. So we need to do something here para makalabas yung minus na yan. Okay? Now, take note, if I'm going to add something sa numerator, dapat 0 siya. Kasi kung hindi 0, change yung original form. Kasi 1 plus 1, 1 pa rin yung result. So, walang change if 0 yung i-add ko. Now, 0 is just equal to I minus I, right? So, if I'm going to add I minus I sa numerator, walang change sa notation natin, right? So, I will do that one para makakuha ako ng minus mamaya. So, we have I minus I plus 1 over I times I plus 1. Right? I is from 1 to 99. Okay, so from that, I will just regroup this one sa numerator. This is just the same as the summation of I plus 1 minus I. So, nidrop ko lang yung I at 1, then minus I. Okay? So, may nakita na akong minus. May malaking role yan mamaya. All over I times I plus 1. I is from 1 to 99. Right? Next, take note that if you have a fraction A minus B over C, this is just the same as A over C minus B over C, right? So therefore, pwede natin yang i-separate ang dalawa, si I plus 1 at si I. Then, copy nyo lang yung denominator. So from that, we will now have the summation of I plus 1 over I times I plus 1 minus I over I times I plus 1. Right? I is from 1 to 99. Okay. Now, observe that I plus 1 sa first, makakancel yan. At si I sa second, makakancel. So, this is just the same as the summation of, okay, summation of, cancel yung I plus 1. So, 1 over I na lang yung matitira sa first. So, this will be canceled out. Ito, makakancel yan. At si I makakancel rin. Right? So, we have this. 1 over I plus 1 na lang sa second term. I is from 1 to 99. Okay. Now, if my A sub I is equal to 1 over I, it will follow that A sub I plus 1 is equal to 1 over I plus 1. Okay, I just replace I by I plus 1 para makita ko to. Right? Now, from that, I can have this 1 as A sub I at ito A sub I plus 1. Are they the same na sa telescoping sum? Hindi pa. Dapat ma-rearrange yan. Dapat si A sub I plus 1 yung nauna kesa sa A sub I. But I can factor out the negative um, sign here. Okay, factoring out negative, I will now have negative of the summation ng ito magiging negative, this one will become positive. So, rearrange, so that will become I plus 1, 1 over I plus 1 minus 1 over I. I is from 1 to 99. So, from that, I have now an expression a sub I plus 1 minus a sub I, which is 1 over I plus 1 minus 1 over I. So from that, I can now use this formula for the telescoping sum. What is my n? My n is 99. So I just substitute 99 sa I plus 1. So that will be negative of 1 over 99 plus 1 minus 1 over cm, substitute natin sa a sub I. So that is 1 over 1. And this is just equal to negative of 1 over 100 minus 1. And that is equal to negative 99 over 100, negative. So that is 99 over 100. So positive 99 over 100 is the sum of this given series, applying telescoping sum. O, di ba? Madali lang. Applying telescoping sum. Okay? So that's it for number 4. Now for problem number 5, if the summation of A sub I is from 1 to 30 is 70, and the summation of B sub I is still from 1 to 30 equal to 50, what is the value of the summation of 3B sub I minus A sub I plus 7 all over 2? I is from 1 to 30. So for this problem, madali lang naman to. I will just copy first the given summation. So that is summation of 3B sub I minus A sub I plus 7 all over 2. I is from 1 to 30. Now take note, I can separate these terms here. Okay, I will just copy the numerator all over the denominator, then separate by the given um, operation carrying the denominator. So we have summation of 3b sub I all over 2 minus a sub I all over 2 plus 7 over 2. I is from 1 to 30. Now, using property 3, I will now have summation of 3b sub I over 2. I is from 1 to 30 minus summation of a sub I over 2. I is from 1 to 30 plus summation of 7 over 2. I is from 1 to 30. So from that, using property 2, I can place the numbers outside the summation. So I have 3 halves. Summation of b sub I is from 1 to 30, minus 1 half. Summation of a sub I is from 1 to 30, plus summation of 7 over 2, I is from 1 to 30. So using the given values from the problem. So we will now have 3 halves times summation of b sub I is 50. So we have times 50 minus 1 half times summation of a sub I is 70 plus summation of constant. So you have 7 halves times 30 minus 1 plus 1. Then evaluating, performing all the operations involved here, the final answer will be 145. You may use your calculators. So, okay. So from that, that ends our um, lesson for series and sigma notation. So I hope may natutunan tayo and thank you for watching.